Welcome to Do You Ever Wonder? The show that brings you answers to many of the questions that you may have, but with no one to ask. Do You Ever Wonder is hosted by Mike Haltman, CEO of Hallmark Abstract Service, who, like you, has always been deeply curious about a wide variety of topics. Each week, Mike will be speaking with guests who are leaders in their field and who have inspirational stories to tell. So now, sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and indeed, my name is Mike Haltman. I am the CEO of Hallmark Abstract Service and the host of Do You Ever Wonder? Today, we have a very special guest. I first heard our guest about 20 years ago at a Community Bankers Association dinner on Long Island. I'm sure he doesn't remember that. But he's a legend in the commercial real estate sales field. His name is Robert Bob Knakal, and he's currently the chairman of New York Investment Sales at JLL.
No, Mike, I'm actually the head of the private capital group at JLL.
Oh boy, when did that change?
At the beginning of the year.
Oh man, you know what? They didn't update your profile, but that's okay. But he's also the founder of a real estate commercial brokerage firm, Massey Knakal, that he sold to Cushman & Wakefield in 2014, and I think you went to JLL in 2018?
Correct.
I knew I'd get one thing right, but welcome, Bob.
Mike, thank you for having me. Great to be here with you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So you and I are probably somewhat close in age. I'm not going to insult you by saying that you are my age, but I'm curious. You've sold over 2,200 buildings. You've generated over 20 billion in sales. What is it that continues to drive you to reach new and higher levels?
You know, Mike, I think it's just a love for the business. I truly love what I do. I remember, back in the days, I'll take you back to 1981. I was a freshman at Wharton, wanted to be the next Gordon Gekko like every other Wharton kid and work on Wall Street. Couldn't get an investment banking job that summer. So I got a job at a place called Coldwell Banker that I thought was a bank initially, and then I saw it was a real estate company, but they hired me for the summer. Loved the job from the first moment I started working in real estate. Thought it was fascinating. I loved the numbers aspect of it. Loved seeing the buildings, and loved everything about it. So I still remember being so excited about the very first building I ever sold. It was 1421 3rd Avenue. I think, one of the things that I've seen in folks that have really succeeded tremendously in our business are the folks who are the most passionate about it. And I feel very fortunate that I stumbled into this industry. It's something that I really love. I still work 7 days a week and love doing it, and have a lucky position of having selling buildings being not only my real estate career, but it's also my hobby.
You know what? That's great. The old saying, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. But I got out of undergrad in 1980, and I remember how difficult that market was. I was fortunate to go back for an MBA in 82, and in 84 when I came out, Wall Street was hiring, so I became a bond analyst. But they often say you fall into what it is that your career is going to be. So way back then, when you did start at Coldwell Banker, you met someone who was to become your partner for quite some time. If I'm correct, you had a handshake deal on splitting commissions. And my question to you is, could that kind of an arrangement ever work today? Could a handshake, when I was on Wall Street, a handshake, your word was your bond. Is that still the case on Wall Street, in the real estate market?
Well, I think so. It was very interesting back in the day, and I'll take you back to 1984, July 14th, I think was my first day. Show up at 437 Madison Avenue to the CB office. And at the time, CB had about 50 brokers leasing office space, 20 in the retail leasing department, and there were 4 guys in the building sales department, 3 of whom had 20 years of experience, and then Paul Massey, who had just gotten out of a 1-year training program. So I show up on my first day, and the boss says, "Hey, Massey just got out of his training program, just started in sales. Follow him around. He'll show you where the coffee machine is, and go to it." And it became very apparent that Paul and I weren't going to be working a lot with the guys with 20 years of experience. So literally day 2 on the job, we were having lunch and said, "Hey, let's work together, split everything 50-50, see how it goes." And that was 4 years of partnership at CB. We left there in November of '88 to form Massey Knakal. We were partners for 26 years at that firm. And so it was a 30-year partnership that started out without a lot of thought or planning. But, Paul and I both had a very similar work ethic. And I think that is a characteristic that really makes or breaks a partnership. Is you can have different skill sets, you can be good at different things, but if you don't have the same work ethic, I think it becomes very challenging. And we were very fortunate. I think, I've said this before and people laugh, but I really believe it's true that if you add up all the hours that we spent working over the 30 years that we worked together, I bet you that difference in aggregate is less than 10 hours. And so that made a great partnership for us.
No question. When I opened my company, I had a partner, and I thought he was going to be a great partner. But exactly to your point, we had much different work ethics. We had much different ideas of what it meant to try and grow a company, and I ended up having to buy him out because, the stress and the tensions that grow, obviously you guys didn't have to go through, which is fantastic.
Oh, we went through stress and tension.
Well, I mean, it's personal.
Yeah, and I get it. That's we didn't have that issue, but the brokerage business is a challenging one. It's always been cyclical, is cyclical, always will be cyclical, and during those downturns, it's challenging. I mean, we almost went bankrupt 3 times during the 26 years that we ran the firm, and but it's both putting the same amount of effort in every day was a big help towards getting us through everything.
No question about it. So what would your suggestion be for young brokers coming up in a market that may be a little challenging? I know the market, know the economy, know how different aspects of the commercial real estate market work, but what would you recommend to them in order to persevere and succeed?
Well, I think the times like this, when they're challenging, sales volumes are down a little bit, so it gives you a little bit more time to work on your business as opposed to working in your business. And I think it's very important, good times or bad, to spend time working on your business as well as in your business. By working on your business, I mean doing planning, creating materials that can help you succeed in the future, doing some research, understanding the market better, and realizing that, I think the one of the most important things in our business is to realize that it's a marathon and not a sprint, and that you want to do what's in the best interest of your client at all times. I tell young people, just pretend your client's a family member. Give the client advice like you would give a family member. And I've said some of the best relationships that I have in the business came from people who I met with that said, "Bob, I'm thinking about selling my building. I want you to come talk to me." And my advice to them was, "Don't sell your building now. It's not the right time." And it might have been 3 years later or 5 years later or 10 years later, I ended up selling the building for those folks, but they really appreciated that I didn't come in and try to encourage them to sell at a time when they really shouldn't. And so I think, giving your clients good advice. We always say, you don't want to be a broker, you want to be an advisor and a trusted advisor. And so give your clients the advice that you would give a family member. What do you really think is in their best interest and why? And and work on yourself during these times when there's a little less activity. Read something that's going to expand your skill set, or study the market more, or an aspect of the market, or create some marketing materials that are going to help you in the future win business. So there are so many things to do in this business. You could work 100 hours a day and not get everything done that you want to get done, but you pick and choose the things that you think will set you up for success in the future.
Absolutely. And the taking care of your client, treating them the way you would like a family member to be treated is 100% the fact. We always, in my business, typically we get business from real estate attorneys, but our client is the buyer. And that's who we have allegiance to. Of course, we appreciate our relationships, but you have to take care of the people who you're being paid to take care of. And you can't forget that. And it's singles and doubles, and if you're going for home runs, that's not really a way to necessarily run a business 100%. So, are you a big believer in networking?
Oh, absolutely. I think that if you look at the sales business, there is a very big difference between institutional sales and private capital sales. And what I mean by private capital are not the big institutional REITs, but individual owners, high net worth individuals, families. Those are predominantly my clients. And I think in that arena, because there are so many folks, if you look at the top 40 owners of real estate in the United States, maybe there are 10 decision makers at each of those firms that give business out. That's 400 people. Every week I speak to 114 property owners on average. So I could speak to all 400 of those people in 1 month, speak to them 12 times a year. Just in New York City, there are about 250 property owners that are not institutional owners, because you have 176,000 properties. You have multiple partners in these transactions. So the list of individual owners is about 250,000. It would take forever to call them. So you have to have market presence. And market presence takes many forms. It's making phone calls, sending emails, sending hard mail, sending texts, and networking, being out in the marketplace, meeting people, going to give a speech at the community bankers dinner.
Never forget you, man.
Yeah, and so creating market presence so that people think of you when they need to do something, and that's not all the time. If you think about using Manhattan as a microcosm, south of 96th Street, there's 27,649 buildings. The average turnover of that stock is 2.6% in the average year, which means, among other things, that when someone buys a property here, they own it for an average of 40 years. So often when you're speaking to people, they don't have anything to do at that particular moment. You want to be top of mind so that when something happens that does precipitate a sale, there's a big dramatic change in their life in some way. They get divorced, there's a death in the family, the tax bill is due, they lose a major tenant, a partnership dispute, something that catalyzes a sale. You want the first thing they think of when they say, I have to sell.
Well,
You
Bob
want them to
Knakal,
think of you.
of course. So, I mean, the way I look at it, that's branding. Somehow keeping your name out in the universe where people will come to take your call. Like, you're in a good position where if you call somebody, they will take your call. Somebody else may have to be cold calling those people, and it's a little more difficult in those cases, but perseverance is, I think that's how I got you to come on here. I just kept annoying you until you finally said, all right, what the hell?
No, there's something to be said for that. I have to tell you a story about one of my favorite people in the business is Harry Knakal. I love Harry. He's been a great client. We've done, I think at last count, 22 or 23 deals together. Several $100 million worth of properties bought and sold. And back in the old days when we were doing our canvassing, I had a sheet of paper that had a photograph of his property pasted on it, tax lot map picture pasted on it, some handwritten notes, and The first 2.5 years I tried calling Harry, I just left messages for him. He was already as a titan of the industry back in those days. I was just a kid, and Harry owned a small little one-story building on East 60th Street, and that was in my territory that I was canvassing back in those days. And I called him month after month, always left a message. So after 2.5 years, I have two pages of left message. I called his office one night at 7 o'clock, and his secretary had gone, picks up the phone, said, "Mr. Knakal, Bob Knakal from Coldwell Banker, been trying to get a hold of you." "Oh, yeah, Bob, I know you leave messages for me all the time. What's going on?" And that was the beginning of a great relationship, and one that I value very much. But you have to have persistence. You have to have perseverance. If you think about it, if you are making cold calls and the average turnover rate in Manhattan is 2.6%, and about half the stuff that goes on the market actually sells, that means only 5% of the properties are on the market. So you could be making 20 cold calls, 19 people could hang up on you. That's about average. So you have to look at it as, hey, if I got hung up on 19 times in a row, odds are very, very high the next one's going to be a good one. So you have to look at the percentages, play the odds, and do the best you can.
That's why I keep playing Powerball. I'm playing those odds, man. One day, one day.
Yep.
So COVID's impact on commercial real estate was devastating for many during COVID, but now that we've come out of COVID, of all the sectors, it seems like office is the most impacted still. What sectors would you say are still being incredibly impacted?
Yeah, well, I think everything has been impacted in one way or another, but every property type sector is reacting and performing differently. If you look at New York today, the multifamily market is doing surprisingly well. That sector has had tremendous political headwinds. And although politicians say they want rent to go down, every piece of legislation that's either been enacted or not enacted has exerted upward pressure on rents. And although cap rates are up because lending rates are up, and you talk about the pandemic, supply chain issues, inflation kicked in, the government spends trillions of dollars, of course inflation is going to kick in. The inflation itself has not had as much of an impact on the real estate market as the way inflation has impacted Fed policy. And Fed policy increasing interest rates has had a very profound impact on the real estate market. So because lending rates are up, cap rates in multifamily are up, but demand is still very strong. If you go to the land market, the Fed started increasing interest rates in March, really didn't start to affect lending rates very profoundly until September. But since September, land values in Manhattan are down 20 to 25%. There's still a good level of demand at that lower price point, but down significantly. The retail sector is a bright spot in the market. Retail rents are down significantly from where they were at the peak, but they've stopped going down. Most people believe they've stopped going down, and that there's only upside there, and leasing volume is picking up. So for the first time in many years, we're getting calls from investors who are looking for retail properties. And then the office sector is still the most opaque coming out of the pandemic, because we're still only at about 50% physical occupancy relative to where we were pre-COVID. And so we're looking at a scenario in New York where we could have 100 million feet of empty office space. We went into the pandemic with about 25 million feet vacant. There's 25.7 million feet of space under construction. If aggregate demand goes down by just 10%, which is a conservative estimate, we could have 100 million feet vacant. So figuring out how to incentivize the private sector to convert a lot of the older, obsolete stock to residential would be great for the residential market. It would be great for the office market. But the office sector is where the most uncertainty is. And I will say you have to differentiate between Class A new construction, which is doing great, fantastic demand, high rents, new office buildings are doing well. It's the secondary and tertiary buildings that need some help,
Well, that's what
and is
I was
still to
actually
be
going to ask
determined.
you. The 515 Madison Avenue CMBS default. That's a B building or a C building. And and then you talked about the legislation, the headwinds of government. How do you view the headwinds of government in terms of office to retail to residential conversion? Do you
Well,
think?
I think there are several, and clearly there are physical hurdles to converting some buildings. Very, very dense floor plates are a challenge. But I mean, there are several things that can be done from a policy perspective to incentivize and make that conversion easier. One thing is for the state, which controls this, to raise the 12 FAR density cap on residential. Many commercial buildings are built to a higher density, so that 12 FAR cap on residential density should be lifted. There should be a change made to the law that says you have to have a window in a bedroom. If someone is choosing to sleep in a space that doesn't have a window, they should be allowed to do that. Nobody's forcing them to.
Right.
The density requirements for the number of units per square foot should also be changed to create more smaller units. I think there'd be big demand for that. We need a 421G type of tax abatement program, which was so instrumental in changing the financial district after 9/11. The city enacted the 421G tax abatement, and we went from 1,800 dwelling units in the financial district to about 30,000 today. And we need that same type of help. We also, that there are considerations for a low interest rate loan program for owners to convert, so to enhance or upgrade office buildings, but remain office buildings. That I think should be changed to incentivize the conversion to residential. So there are many things that can be done to incentivize that conversion. And again, it would be really good for our housing market. We need units desperately. And it would be good for the office market too, to get rid of some of this overhang of the vacant space that potentially is out there.
I agree. It seems though that the infighting, the political infighting, is at levels that I've never seen in my lifetime. And good ideas, bad ideas, it's hard to get anything going, it seems. But I know that I was talking to an owner of multifamily, and they warehouse. The reason, I guess, one of the reasons that rents are so strong is the fact that they're warehousing apartments, because all of the legislation that's come down has made it they've been disincentivized in a large way to put those apartments on the market.
Yeah, so we touched on this earlier, Mike. And I think if you look at the legislation that's been passed, I said everything that's been done has exerted upward pressure on rents. So let's look at the housing stock, and let's look at the changes to the housing laws that went into effect in June of 2019. The two programs that probably are most responsible for the great quality of the housing stock in New York are the MCI and the IAI programs in multifamily. And I'll take you back to 1977. The Yankees are in the World Series against the Dodgers. Reggie Jackson's hitting those 3 home runs. And the Goodyear blimp pans out, and 6 fires going on within a few blocks of the stadium. And Howard Cosell says the Bronx is burning, right? The reason that was happening is because it made more sense for some owners to burn their property down than to put money into renovating, right? So the city enacted the MCI and the IAI program that incentivized the private sector to invest tens of billions of dollars in the housing stocks. In 1977, the dilapidation rate in New York City, meaning a dilapidated apartment is one that's uninhabitable. The dilapidation rate in 1970s was 14%. The MCI and the IAA went in. In 2019, the dilapidation rate in New York was 0.04%. And what the policy changes in 2019 did basically marginalize both of those programs. So now it makes more sense for an owner who gets a rent stabilized apartment back to nail the door shut than to re-rent it, which is again constraining supply, exerting upward pressure on rents. The lack of having a 421A tax abatement program for new construction or an Affordable New York program has created a big air bubble in the supply pipeline of new units that is also exerting upward pressure on rents. So there are a number of things that can be done to incentivize creation of more supply, and all of our issues in the housing market are solved by more supply. And even if an elected official believes that an Econ 101 textbook is capitalist propaganda, look no further than the pandemic, when vacancy rose so much, effectively increasing supply. Rents dropped 30% in New York. And so we need more supply. With more supply, it will regulate rents, make it more affordable for people. Just folks have to get on board with realizing that we can supply our way out of our problems, not confiscate private property and try to control what people can do with their private property. It's creating more supply is the answer.
Hopefully the powers that be will somehow figure that out. You have to have I guess you have to be optimistic about that. But the last thing is, and I'll let you go, you're a Yankee fan, I'm a lifelong Mets fan, but I don't hold that against you. But you have a unique marketing tool that, and I don't know that it comes with one of those flat pieces of gum that I used to love so much. But tell me a little bit about your baseball card.
Sure, happy to. And firstly, I will say yes, lifelong diehard Yankee fan, but I always like to see the Mets do well. I was very disappointed in 1973. The Mets had Willie Mays in the twilight of his career, lost to the A's in the World Series, but I loved seeing the Mets win 69 with Seaver and Gary Gentry and Jerry Koosman and Nolan Ryan as a rookie.
I watched that at Rusty's on First Avenue.
Yep, and again, 1986 was a great team, so I enjoyed seeing the Mets win as well. But my baseball card, actually, it's 8.5 by 11. It's a little goofy thing. This is actually the knockoff of the 1970s Topps card. And then on the back, I have my lifetime statistics, and I'll tell you the origin of this. Have a client who I've done several deals with over the years, hadn't worked with him on a deal in 5 or 6 years. And I see this guy all the time. We're on a board together, and I bumped into him on the street one day, and we're chatting. I asked him what he was doing, and he told me he was finally going to develop his site in Queens, and that he was going to be going into the market for a construction loan. And I said, "Oh, you have to talk to our mortgage brokers. We have a great mortgage brokerage team. You got to talk to our guys." And he said, "Oh, Bob, thanks very much, but I'm going to go with JLL." And I said, "I've been at JLL for 4 years." And he said, "Yo, I thought you were still at Cushman and Wakefield." So I said, how do I get this message out to the marketplace? So I thought, I have to let people know the progression from Massey Knakal to Cushman and Wakefield to JLL. And so as a kid, I collected baseball cards, loved reading and studying the stats on the back. And I thought maybe I would do the same thing. And I did it kind of as a goof to send one to this client. And then a few people saw it and said, "Hey, could I have one of those?" And I ended up sending out thousands and thousands of them, and it's been a neat thing. But
Well, it's kind of along the lines of what you said before. You have to brand, you have to be out there, you have to be. I mean, you are recognizable, but a great idea, and it worked well. So fantastic. Well, I would like to thank you for coming on here. It was a pleasure. I had a few other questions, but they can wait for another time. I'll bug you, and maybe in a few years you'll come back on. But a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mike, it was great. Great spending time with you. And I wish everybody out there watching best of luck to you. It's a challenging time, but you know what? These are times when you really can solidify relationships, enhance relationships, and put yourself in a position to succeed in the future. So I wish everybody the best of luck.
Well, thank you very much. And we'll be signing off now.
Thank you for listening to Do You Ever Wonder? And we hope that you enjoyed the show. Next week, we will have another terrific guest telling their story. And if there are any specific topics you'd like to hear more about, please don't hesitate to let us know. Our curiosity, like yours, knows no bounds. Please subscribe and like and share this episode on your social media. See you next week.